Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to be taking you guys along as I make my quick 60-minute dinner roll recipe with fresh milled flour. The principal recipe will be in the description box down below. Thank you so much for watching. To my mixer bowl, I have some warm water I'm going to add. I'm adding 365 grams of warm water. I'm using warm water to speed up the rising since I want these to be done in 60 minutes. And I'm going to add in all of my ingredients. I'm going to go ahead and put in 10 grams of salt. So I'm not doing an autolyse or any kind of rest or soak or whatever it is that you want to call it. I'm adding everything in all at once. So here I'm putting in 10 grams of salt. All right, I'm adding in 36 grams of oil. I'm going to zero out my scale and do 36 grams of oil. 85 grams of honey. You can do more honey if you want it sweeter. You can do less honey. You can also use sugar. It is up to your personal preference, your kitchen, your rules. And I'm going to put my flour in before I put my yeast in. I like to do this because I sometimes feel like the yeast gets clumpy when I put it directly in the water when using instant yeast. It might just be in my mind. That might not actually be happening, but I just have a habit of putting my flour in first. Okay, and so that was 500 grams of fresh milled flour made from 500 grams of hard white wheat. And now I'm adding in 20 grams of instant yeast. Okay. And if the yeast amount seems high compared to your usual recipe, that is because these are intended to rise quickly. If I had more time and I did not need them to rise quickly, I could use less yeast. But for the purposes of the 60-minute dinner roll recipe, it is 20 grams of yeast for the recipe. Okay, so now we're going to move this to the mixer, and I'm going to be using the Zacme 8-quart mixer. I'm going to readjust my camera here in a moment. I've been enjoying this Zacme mixer. It's a very strong mixer and a very quiet mixer. It is the quietest mixer that I have used. I enjoy the timer function, and I'm able to push a pause button with the timer. The attachments are very nice and sturdy, which I really do enjoy. I really also enjoy the bowl light. I do have a video reviewing this mixer. If you want to check that out, that I can link that in the description box down below. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and knead this on speed 4 because we're trying to speed this up, right? And it's a small batch, and I know this mixer can handle it. As you can see, it's not wobbling or anything like that. And dinner is quickly approaching. We started at 4:40. It's now 4:55. All right, guys, I'm gonna let this knead, and I will be back once I reach a window pane with this dough. While this is kneading, I do want to say a couple things. So first, if you click on the link for this recipe in the description, you'll find that there are different variations for the 60-minute dinner roll recipe. When I make this, I typically just use water. I don't typically use milk, and I typically don't use eggs either. But I do have measurements to use milk and eggs if you want an enriched dough, and also sunflower lecithin. I do use sunflower lecithin, especially if I'm making it a day ahead. The lecithin really helps to preserve the bread and to keep it nice and soft for multiple days. But since I'm going to be making this and we're going to be having it for dinner, I am going to go ahead and just skip out on the sunflower lecithin because they'll be very soft even without it. So I do want to make that distinction. If you enjoy having milk and butter and eggs in your dinner roll recipe, it will be in the printable recipe, as well as the version that I'm doing here with just the water and the oil. So we've been kneading for 8 minutes now, and you can see it's starting to come together nicely, and you can tell that by how it's starting to ball up in the center of the mixer. That lets us know that the gluten is forming and that it's getting tighter and tighter. And as that ball continues to get tight, it's going to collect up the rest of the dough that is sticking to the bowl. And so in a couple minutes, we should have the bowl looking much cleaner. So I'll come back on in a couple minutes to show you guys. Okay guys, so I'm back and it's been 11 minutes now, and you can see it's really picking up the dough on the side of the bowl. If you're a person that is tempted to add more flour, I just encourage you not to do that if you see that the dough is balling up, because it will eventually come together. Now, it would typically take me less time than this to knead and to achieve a window pane. But because I did not do any kind of a rest or autolyse, it is taking a bit longer, and I'm perfectly fine with that because it is still saving me time, because I would normally do a 20-minute autolyse and then come back and knead for, say, 10 minutes. So that's 30 minutes right there. So I'm fine with if I have to knead for 15 minutes because I'm still saving time. So again, at the beginning of this, all of the ingredients were put in straight away. The salt and the yeast and all the other ingredients were added to the dough. And as you can see, it's coming together very nicely. I'm going to turn it down now because I feel like this mixer is kneading like a madman. So I'm turning it down now. So I'm going to let this go. I'm going to check for a window pane shortly. We're at 12 minutes here. I'm going to let this go for a little bit longer to see if it will pick up the rest of what is in the bowl, and I'll be back shortly. Okay, so we're coming up on the 15-minute mark here, and I suspect that we have a good window pane just by how it has cleaned the bowl and it is balling up. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it and do a window pane test and carry on with the rest of the recipe. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get these divided up. So we just finished kneading. I'll go ahead and do a window pane test. I know that I should certainly have a great window pane by now. The dough is still pretty tight, so the window pane is breaking a bit easily, but as you can see there, it is a great window pane. And bloop. All right. So I lightly oiled my countertop, and I'm gonna get the dough on there. And make sure you oil your hands as well so that it's not so sticky on your hands. So I'm making 12 rolls. These are pretty large rolls, so if you wanted to make more than 12, you could easily do probably 16 rolls with this dough. But I like to, if I'm not going to weigh it and if I'm just eyeballing it, I like to get it into a ball. And then I get a bench scraper. And so since I'm making 12 rolls, I'm going to start by breaking this into four roughly even portions. And then I'm going to break those four portions into three. And that's how I get somewhat even shaped rolls without having to use a scale. And so then I take these and I shape them into a ball. And I'm just realizing I did the wrong math. I was actually supposed to take these and break it into three and then into four. And I'm going to rewind and do that. So I will use my scale to get the 3 balls, and then from there I will. So I have 1,013 grams. I'm going to divide that into 3. So now we have 3 roughly even shapes, and I'm going to make each one of these into a ball. And then it'll be easy to break these into 4. Breaking dough into 3 or into any odd number is a lot harder. It's a lot harder to eyeball it, at least. If you don't have a bench scraper, either a metal or plastic, I actually recommend having both because they're both good for certain things. This is great for getting the dough out of the bowl. You can also use it to cut the dough the same way as the metal, but I prefer the metal for actually cutting the dough. So I'm going to take each of these and split it into 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just like that. I sometimes see you guys say that your dough is very wet, and I'm honestly not sure how that's happening. I don't know if you guys are using maybe very large eggs, but even in the egg version, the water is greatly reduced to compensate for the egg. Okay, I'm going to get my pan for these. So for rolls, I love a pan with a lid. The lid is very helpful to be able to cover it without constantly having to use plastic wrap. So I'm using a Pyrex baking dish that has a lid. I also enjoy these metal baking pans with lids as well. These are so handy for baking. Okay, I'm gonna line this with parchment paper. This is not required, but for me, it makes it for easy cleanup. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and shape these into balls. You can do this many different ways. I just take the ends and just roll them in and tuck until the dough ball starts to getting tight, and then you can just pinch the bottom like that. That's one way, or you can roll it along the counter to create surface tension like that. So there's our roll. Okay, so I'm gonna put these on top of my stove to rise in a warm place. I'm gonna cover it with my lid, and I'll see you all shortly. All right, guys, so these rolls have been rising for about 20 minutes now. I'm gonna go ahead and put these in the oven. It is now about 5:40. So I'm about to put these in the oven on 375 for about 15 to 20 minutes, or until the internal temperature reaches 190 to 200 degrees. Okay guys, so these are fresh out of the oven. I did go ahead and rub some melted butter on them. So it is now 6:08 p.m. So I'm just a little bit past dinner time. I started this at 4:40 and it's now basically 6 o'clock. And again, I am chasing around a 7-month-old baby. And so without distractions, I'm sure I could have done this in 60 minutes or less. But yeah, so this is the final product. Nice, soft, buttery dinner rolls. I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you for watching.